Juice WRLD's ex has always poked holes in the official story of his death. Now she's just dropped a bombshell in court accusing his own team of being responsible, but what really froze the courtroom wasn't the accusation, it was her chilling account of Juice's final words. Let's get into it. The warning: no one heard Juice WRLD didn't die the way they told you for years. The official story was clean-cut: seizure, overdose, tragic but inevitable. The headlines were fast, the tributes emotional, and the blame neatly assigned to the lifestyle, but the story was missing something. And now finally his ex-girlfriend Ali Lahi, the one who was literally by his side during his final tours, who he wouldn't even board a plane without, just said something in court that changes everything. Not only did she hint that Juice was being manipulated even as his body gave out, she made claims about how he was handled, what he knew, and the terrifying pressure behind closed doors. She didn't just lose a boyfriend, she watched Jared Higgins become Juice WRLD and then vanish. She claims that his team watched him spiral and didn't stop him. She says she was the only one helping him manage the panic attacks, the drug use, and the non-stop recording schedule that left him tired beyond human, and that no one else around him even understood what was really happening to him mentally or physically. And this isn't the first time she said it.
It's like, I'm upset, and I'm like, okay, what's up? It's like, what do you mean a panic attack? Like, no one knew.
For those who don't know, Ali Lahi's real name Alicia was not some overnight groupie or clout chaser. In fact, she was living a wildly independent life before she ever met Juice WRLD. She'd thrown warehouse parties in Philly, bartended in Memphis, and even worked in strip clubs just to survive, all before age 25. She'd been broke, homeless, alone, and when she met Jared, she didn't care about Juice WRLD because she didn't even know who he was.
Like, I don't know who this kid is, but this is, if I made music, you're mixing a bunch of genres together and being so good at it.
Fact, she thought Lucid Dreams was just a cool track some kid in her circle had passed around. It wasn't until months later, when the song blew up, that she realized who he really was. By then they had already been talking. She messaged him casually, he messaged back. They talked about anxiety, panic, trust, and before she knew it, she was flying out to see him in Rhode Island. But what started as a chill weekend turned into something else entirely. He would let her leave, not in a creepy, violent way, but in a way that made it clear Juice WRLD didn't want to be alone anymore, ever.
Jared literally he kidnapped me, is the only way we could say it. It's like a joke that we would say, but it happened.
From that day forward, she was on tour. Every flight, every hotel, every meltdown, every overdose scare. He needed her, and not just for love but for survival. And here's where it gets dark. Ali says Jared's team, his label, his security, his so-called friends didn't understand what he was going through. Not the emotional spiral, not the constant pressure, not even the signs of full-blown mental and physical collapse, but she did. She talked him through panic attacks, put his hands in ice, told him to breathe, watched him hyperventilate backstage, and still the show went on day after day, city after city. More songs, more pressure, more pills. And this is where it starts to get sick, because Ali now suggests that this wasn't just carelessness, it was a calculated risk by the people around Juice WRLD. See, according to her testimony, Jared didn't just work hard, he was pushed aggressively by an industry that saw a cash cow and a kid too naive to say no. Juice recorded over 2,000 unreleased songs in just 2 years. 2,000, that's not just a work ethic, that's exploitation. And in her own words, Jared was exhausted mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Jared was tired.
Right.
Jared was tired. His body, at the end of the day, what I could say about when everything happened is just his body was tired. I was tired. My body has gone through a lot, but my body was tired. Like, I can only imagine what his brain would move 8 times faster than mine.
But instead of pulling him back, slowing down the schedule, or getting him help, they booked more tours, more festivals, more flights. And the worst part, the very people who were supposed to protect him were the same ones making millions off his pain. Ali says Jared would have never made it to Tokyo without her. He couldn't function, couldn't organize, couldn't even get his passport without a crisis.
I remember crying. He was like, she's gonna get her passport tomorrow at 12, so I had to go to the DMV at 8 a.m.
She was holding him together while the industry kept raking it in. And now, years later, and after staying quiet through grief, trauma, and scrutiny from fans who accused her of being just another groupie, Ali is finally telling the full story in court. And what she's saying, it changes everything, because if even half of what she's revealing is true, Juice WRLD didn't just die from a seizure on a plane, he was failed systematically by a music industry that knew exactly exactly what it was doing, and by people who made their fortunes off a kid who never had a chance to grow up. So now the question becomes, what really happened during those final 24 hours? What did Ali see, and what evidence did she have to back it up? But let's be clear, Ali didn't just stumble into his life. She warned his family early on. She told them exactly what she saw happening and exactly what Jared needed to survive the chaos.
You have your son, like, he's 19. Around everyone else he's around is 25, 26.
This wasn't paranoia, it was reality. Jared was the youngest person in every room, and also the richest, the most famous, the most in demand, and everyone wanted a piece of him. But she wasn't just worried about his finances, she was worried about his mind, because she was watching him go through something most people couldn't even identify: full-blown panic episodes, rapid mood shifts, paranoia and dissociation.
It's like, what do you mean a panic attack? Like, no one knew around him.
And while she gave him breathing exercises, cold compresses, and grounding tips, others gave him more pills and more flights and more pressure. Ali wasn't just his girlfriend, she was the only person in his circle, according to her, who actually said stop. But that didn't matter, because by then Juice WRLD had become a brand, one too big to pause. His unreleased catalog worth millions, his shows selling out globally. Every day off was money lost, and so the show went on even as his body was breaking down. And the scariest part of this expose is that Ali says she saw it coming. She literally had a breakdown in the shower one day, no trigger, no warning, just a sense that her world was slipping away.
We were in the shower and I just started bursting into tears. That was like, you're not gonna be here.
You can hear it in her voice. That moment wasn't just emotional, it was prophetic. And looking back now, after all the tours, overdoses, delays, and lawsuits, she says she's haunted by the signs she missed, but even worse, the signs she didn't miss, the ones she screamed about and nobody listened. This isn't just a story of love and loss, it's a story of negligence, of calculated silence, and of a machine that chews up kids for clicks and platinum plaques. Because if you believe Ali's side of the story, Juice WRLD didn't stand a chance. The flight that ended everything. So now we dive into the final 24 hours, the day that changed everything: the private jet, the pills, the seizure, the headlines. But what happened before the cameras roll? What does Ali say really went down in those final moments? Let's piece it together with her words. According to Ali, the days leading up to Juice WRLD's death were already chaotic, but more importantly, they weren't supposed to be. She claims Jared had been planning to slow down, to take a break, to finally step back from the industry carousel, but the team around him kept the pressure up. They scheduled shows, flights, appearances, recording sessions. Constant motion, constant profit. And then came the final flight. The story the public got was simple: Juice WRLD suffered a seizure after landing at Chicago's Midway Airport. Pills were involved. The end. But Ali says it wasn't just a seizure, and it wasn't just the pills, it was a storm of things. First, the team was panicking before they landed. According to reports, federal agents were already waiting at the airport after being tipped off about drugs and weapons on the plane. Juice WRLD swallowed multiple Percocet pills to hide them from authorities. That's what the initial story claimed, but Ali now hints that the narrative isn't that clean. She suggests Jared didn't intend to ingest that much. He was terrified, confused, and most importantly alone in that decision. Why? Because in those final moments the people around him froze, panicked, or worse, disappeared. She's asked repeatedly in interviews, where was security, where was management who let him take that many pills? Her answer: chilling silence.
I could have made sure that people were gone that shouldn't have been around, because that it was like, what, I don't know, because when I said something, it wasn't, even if I might have been a cunt, or sorry, but that's what I was.
She's not just talking about that one day, she's talking about years of being ignored, marginalized, treated like just a girlfriend, even when she was the one holding him up when he collapsed. Ali says Jared was surrounded but utterly alone in the final flight. It was just the final blow. According to the official coroner's report, Juice WRLD died from oxycodone and codeine toxicity, but the circumstances leading to the dose, the why, was never fully investigated publicly. Ali says that's not an accident. She says people around Jared had incentive to cover up the chaos because they were profiting from it. She even hints that Juice WRLD's unreleased music catalog with thousands of songs became more valuable after his death, and that certain figures immediately moved in to control the estate, cutting her out completely. I have not listened to Legends Never Die, I can't do it. And here's where it turns dark, because Ali claims that not only was she cut off, she was actively discredited, branded as a Cloud chaser, liar, even a suspect in his death. Online trolls flooded her inbox, blogs twisted her story. Was she feeding him drugs? Did she sell him out? Why was she the last person with him? It became a circus, and the people who knew the truth stayed silent. Ali's truth now told in court and podcast paints a disturbing picture of an industry that knew what was happening and let it happen anyway because the product was worth more than the person. And now the question is, will anyone be held accountable? Because Juice WRLD didn't fake the seizures, he didn't fake the exhaustion, he didn't fake the anxiety, the fear, or the pleas for help. We've seen the videos, we've heard the lyrics. He was crying out constantly, and if Ali's telling the truth, then a lot of people heard it. And here's where everything fractures, not just in Jared's body but in Ali's life, because the moment that plane landed, it wasn't just Jared who lost everything. Ali's world collapsed in real time. Imagine this: you're on a jet, the man you love, the man you've traveled the world with, who calls you his lifeline, who drags you to the DMV for a passport just so you can fly with him, is convulsing on the floor. Airport security is banging on the door, and suddenly everything stops: the music, the future, the dream. According to official reports, Juice WRLD began seizing moments after the jet touched down at Midway Airport. The emergency team rushed and he was taken to a nearby hospital, and by 3:14 a.m. he was pronounced dead. But what wasn't reported: Ali says she was interrogated like a suspect, not comforted, not supported, not even believed. They asked her what drugs he took, who gave them to him, if she had any on her, while she was still processing the fact that her boyfriend had just died right in front of her. She wasn't treated like a grieving partner, she was treated like a problem to manage. And here's the gut punch: she wasn't allowed to grieve at all as Juice WRLD's death went viral, racking up headlines, hashtags, and hysteria. Ali was locked out of the hospital, the estate, and the narrative. According to her, she didn't get a call from his team, no one asked how she was doing, no one offered support, and when the press finally reached out, she was advised to stay quiet, not by enemies, by people she thought were on Jared's side, because from the moment he died, his death became a business. Let's talk numbers. Within 48 hours, Juice WRLD's music surged across all platforms. Lucid Dreams hit 1 on Apple Music again, streaming went up 487%. Legends Never Die, his first album, sold nearly 500,000 units in its debut week. And where was Ali? Nowhere near it. She was isolated, shut out, portrayed as a side character in her own story. And then came the smears. People began whispering, suggesting she was involved, that she enabled him, that she was cloud chasing, that she didn't belong on the stage despite literally being on tour with him. Ali has called this era the darkest of her life, not because of the grief but because of the gaslighting. She says she knew something was wrong in the industry long before Jared passed. She saw the burnout, the mental health breakdowns, the shady deals, but when she spoke up, she was told to just be the girlfriend. Even her warnings to Jared's family, she says, were dismissed. She saw vultures, manipulators, people who claimed to be friends but who didn't step in when the drugs got worse, didn't step in when the tour dates piled up, didn't stop the machine, and now they were profiting from the result. This isn't conspiracy, it's history. Artists have long been commodified in death, from Tupac and Biggie to Zentation and Pop Smoke. Labels monetize tragedy, fans replay the music, but behind all that, real people are left with silence, guilt, unanswered questions, and that's what Ali was drowning in. And maybe that's why years later she finally broke the silence, not just online but in court, because she couldn't carry the burden anymore. She says that what happened to Juice WRLD should have been preventable, that people around him knew he was struggling, that she told them, that she screamed it, and that instead of stepping in they stepped aside, and when the final crisis hit they vanished. So now in 2025 she's demanding accountability, not just from the label or the estate or the blogs that profited off her pain, but from a culture that glamorizes addiction, speed, and self-destruction until the body drops, because that's what Jared's death really was: not an accident, not an isolated tragedy, but the final product of an industry that turns vulnerability into content, erased from his legacy. What if you watched someone build an empire only to be erased from it the moment they were gone? That's what Ali Elahi claims happened in court. In interviews and countless airy clips, she said the same thing over and over again: I was there every show, every crash, every hospital visit, and now I'm nobody to them. But here's what you haven't heard: she says she had access to unreleased albums, entire projects written with her about her albums. Juice WRLD had played for her in hotel rooms, on flights, in the car, whispering lyrics in her ear before anyone else ever heard them, and now she doesn't even have the right to listen to them publicly without being attacked.
Jared made a whole album about me and I wasn't allowed to listen to it. put on. I have not listened to Legends Never Die. I can't do it.
Think about it, a woman who inspired entire songs, who helped hold a globally famous artist together, now can't even bring herself to press play because the album wasn't just music, it was a corpse repackaged, a brand resold. Ally says she knew immediately what was happening. She says that within days of Juice's death, people around him moved swiftly to control the unreleased music vault, lock her out of estate discussions, and begin marketing Juice WRLD as a finished product, not a human being. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's standard industry practice. Lucid Dreams alone generated over $15 million, and with over 2,000 unreleased songs, the posthumous catalog was a goldmine. One ally says she was never consulted about, she had no rights to it, no say, and from her telling, no respect. But that's not even the part that hurts most, it's what those around Jared did after, because Ally now claims that people in his circle began rewriting history, painting her as a side character, a tag-along, even a liability. And the most damning part, she says they started removing her from photos, literally going back through old social posts, group shots, red carpets, and cropping her out, erasing her from the narrative. Because for Ally it was never about owning a piece of Juice WRLD, it was about keeping Jared's story honest, and now she's taking that mission personally. Let's talk about the text. She says there are private messages between her and Jared that show just how scared he really was, that he was aware of how fast everything was moving, that he needed to slow down, that he didn't trust everyone around him. In one message, which she has paraphrased in interviews, Jared allegedly told her, "They don't care about my mind, they just want my music." And she believes that's exactly what happened. Ally describes watching Jared's personality shift in his final months. He wasn't just tired, he was terrified. He didn't want to party, he didn't want to hit the club like other artists. He wanted to play video games, watch cartoons, collect vintage fashion, read fan DM.
He was like, where is the GameStop and how much money do they take? Can I buy the GameStop? Or like, that's what we spent, that's what he spent money on. Like, yes, we spent money on clothes, and I have like 3 Chanel purses that he had got me from 1993, because that's when I was born.
He was a kid with a gift and a target on his back, and after he died, Ally believes the system got exactly what it wanted, a forever young, forever tragic artist whose legacy could be shaped however they please. They put out Legends Never Die, a polished, radio-friendly mega sellout tribute to Jared without the woman who was there for every breakdown. They promoted it like a farewell letter, but Ally says it felt like a slap in the face because Jared never meant for things to end this way. In fact, she says he had planned his next move carefully. He wanted to take a break record at his own pace, maybe even start his own label, something that gave him the power for once.
But he was gonna sit there, put an album out that I have written right on that phone.
He was done being a machine, but the people around him had other plans, and now years later, Ally is still trying to find her voice. She's been called a liar, a manipulator, a leech, but through it all she keeps showing up in court and interviews in front of fans, telling the same truth. I was there, I tried to stop it, and I will never let them rewrite what he meant or who he was. In one particularly emotional moment, she breaks down describing how different Jared and Juice WRLD really were.
Juice WRLD is still here, and he is still here, but Jared is not here, and it's hard.
You can hear the pain, the fracture, the raw wound of watching the world celebrate the version of him that sells while the version she loved is buried deeper every year. So now the question is, where does Ali Lottie go from here? The answer: she's building something. She's begun hinting at projects, memoirs, advocacy for artist rights, and even cryptic mentions of having access to music that fans have never heard. Music Jared gave her music she's now deciding whether to share or protect, but more than that, she says she's here to warn the next generation, warn them that fame is never free, that deals have fine print, that love in this industry can be transactional, and so can debt. Ally says she doesn't want sympathy, she wants accountability for every manager who pushed the schedule, every executive who ignored the panic attacks, every peer who looked the other way while pills piled up, and every brand that used his name for clicks while forgetting his pain. She's made peace with the fact that she can't bring Jared back, but she's not going to let them bury the truth with him. So if you're watching this and you're a fan, know this: the Juice WRLD you love, the heartbroken poet, the melodic genius, the vulnerable kid was real, but he was also a victim, and his story isn't over because the person who saw everything, who watched it happen in real time, is finally speaking up. And if her words are even half true, then we all need to ask, how many more will the industry lose before something changes? Rest in peace, Jared Higgins, and thank you, Ally, for not letting the silence win. Thanks for watching. Check out our other exciting content by clicking on your screen.